Hello friends. So you want to farm full time and you've got everything paid for. Here's some interesting numbers for you. If you wanted to do that in the hutch calf business and you could make $25 a hutch calf, you're going to need 200 head of hutch calves. So you're going to need a minimum, 60,000 in hutches, 40,000 for a cheap bobcat, cheap pickup and trailer to service your customers. You need a minimum 500,000 in real estate. That's a mobile home on junk mobile home on 8 or 9 acres with, a little building garage for hot water. You're going to need 100,000 in calves. You're going to need 50,000 in grain and hay or grain and milk the first 2 months before you start rolling. If you're going to get in the stocker business, if you can make a dollar a day, in the past, you only have pasture for 200 days a year, so you need 300 head to make 5,000 a month. Northwest Washington, to get a piece of real estate like that, to be $2 million. You could move somewhere, find something cheaper, so maybe 700,000 or 800,000. But again, you're going to need a minimum $50,000-$60,000 of bare minimum, SUV, pickup, fencing, equipment, stuff like that. And you're going to need 300,000 for the stockers on the cheap side. If you're going to get into feeders, if you could make $20 per head per month feeding cattle, you would need 250 head to make 5,000 a month. It's going to take 50 to 100K minimum for equipment. I mean, that's a cheap loader, cheap mixer wagon, cheap pull tractor. You got to have a chute, things like that. Can you find a feed yard to buy somewhere, 50 to 100, 500 to $1 million? Yeah. Then you don't have any place to go with your manure. There's that. You're going to need 300,000 in feeder cattle. If you want to do cow calf, if you can figure out, this year cow calf guys are making $400 a pair. Most years you're lucky to make two, but let's call 300 a pair. So you need 200 head of mama cows to make 5,000 a month, which means you need about 220 head, right? And also means you need 40, 50 head of heifers. So that's another 300,000. And again, bare minimum, you either need 50, 60,000 in bare minimum, an old tractor, and an old chute. That's bare minimum. So, you're looking at 700 to $1.5 million on any one of these. If you achieve that, right? If you make that goal, you get there. You now are one man or woman, and you either have to feed 200 head of hutch calves, or you got to run 300 head of stockers, or 250 feeders, or 220 mama cows. So you are right at the edge of what one person can accomplish in a day. You are stressed out to the max. So, if you want a hired man, which, could you keep up the pace on this for 2 years? Yeah. Could you keep up the pace 5 years? You can't have a single thing go wrong. And so if you're going to get a hired man, you've got to increase those numbers by 50%. Instead of 200 hutch calves, you got to have a minimum 3. That's for a low cost part-time hired man. If you don't own the property, if you need to rent, you got to increase that again. So, if you're going to have a hired man and you've got any kind of land payment or rent, you about got to double those numbers. 400 hutch calves, 600 stockers, 500 feeders, 440 mama cows. So, multi-million dollars to create a lifestyle that is a bitch. So, if you backwards reconstruct and say, well, what's my goal? My goal is to, I want to farm, want to retire, want to give something to my kids. It's a lot less stress and a lot more attainable if you just keep your job in town and you have a goal of producing 500 a month of off-farm after-tax income that you could build your wealth, build your retirement with. So if you just, if you're working uptown, you're driving a city bus or, working at a factory, I don't know. You just want to make $500. That's 20 hutch calves. Well, now you're down there, wheelbarrow, kids can help. You know, it's a doable deal. It's 30 stockers. You know, you can always find a piece of pasture to rent for 30 head. You know, finding a piece of pasture for 300 head, that's a bitch. Finding a quarter for 30, yeah, you know, that's a very doable, low stress thing. 25 feeders, yep, you know, if you're like me, you can get brewer's grain or you've got cover crops available, wheat silage. 25 head of feeders is a very doable situation, and frankly, it's easier to merchandise that. You know, you could sell those as butcher beef, and or 22 mama cows. Again, you can almost always find a spot to put 5, 10 cows. You only need 2 of those for your 22 mama cows. You know, and you know, if you take 500 a month for 30 years at 10% interest, that's an extra 684,000 in assets. You combine that with paying for your house, your little piece of property, and some 401k stuff at work. You have a, you know, if that's a third of your, you know, if this enterprise is going to be a third of your retirement, you know, that's a $2 million retirement. I mean, that's, you would be the envy of 98% of the people in the world. Well, probably 99% of people in the world, 95% of people in America, if you had a $2 million retirement plan. And so I think, you know, yes, it's the goal to farm full time, but even when you get there, the potential for a nightmare, right? To raise 200 hutch calves by yourself, no labor, on a cheap piece of ground with, you know, to have 250 feeders with no help and shitty equipment, it's not like you've reached a panacea. So don't discount these smaller enterprises. You know, and if you can get to where those 22 mama cows are producing you, you know, 20 head of stockers every year and 15 head of feeders every year, where you combine some of those in, I mean, a small 22 cow calf business could become a business that produces over time $1 million or $1.5 million worth of assets. So, hey, long TikTok, just a lot of discussion about this, you know, small farmer, this and that. Those are some of your numbers. God bless you and happy freaking New Year.